numbers in there. Director Black. Oh, jeez.
Hello. Oops.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
Just muted over here. I think that's what happens to us that night is it gets confused.
Hallelujah.
Okay. Oh, I caught you out of the corner of my eye. So you saw my email to Cheyenne. And she said she'd either be on today or have somebody. And then I said we have a meeting on Monday too at 3 o'clock.
How you got that little background behind you?
When you go to the,
I was looking at that on your. You got really Homer office or something.
you go into.
Someone in our Sunday school class had the beach behind them. We were like, where are y'all? Yes, that would be the place.
You know, we had a friend of ours that they would take that to go down the beach.
Hi.
They've done something to VRBO and thing something and halfway there.
Well, the problem I've run into is like, can anybody hear me? So at least if the video's moving, they realize they're in the meeting and everything's fine. You know, I'm playing whack-a-mole trying to get everybody muted, and they're unmuting themselves saying, can you hear me? Like, now I can't.
Yeah, when you see the video, you're right. When you first log on sometimes,
That's exactly it.
How about Michael Morris, just standing right there?
I bought us some chicken butt at all times. Years ago.
Dale is here, just so you know, Jim.
Oh, Dale is,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm sorry. Oh, no, I don't. This is my best side. Let's see. How's that? Yeah, my best side is when you can't quite see me.
Give this to Janet for me. Thank you.
We ready?
We're ready.
Carol, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Kevin, are you
And
ready?
I'm ready.
Good. I'll call our meeting to order then. We have in the room with us, we have Pete, have Holly, have Ray, and we have Dr. King in here. So I will just begin the meeting by just kind of recapping where the discussion we had at our board meeting. And if you recall at the board meeting, we discussed the fact that as far as FY20 goes, we should anticipate a shortfall in revenue, a little over $6 million, which would pull our fund balance down at the end of this year, fiscal year 20, to about $7.6 million. And then furthermore, we were told to anticipate a revenue shortfall in excess of $10 million for next year, which would require us to make cuts to the FY20. If we just froze the FY20 budget, to make cuts of a little over $10.5 million. And that would be what would be required to, in addition, take our fund balance down to the required 3% minimum. I think since that time, Mr. Chairman, we didn't talk about this, but I think we all realize that in addition to those challenges, that we need to be thinking about next year additional costs that we don't normally see that will likely be necessary in order to operate in a COVID-19 environment. I think we all feel like it's absolutely critical that we be ready to open school, that our kids can't lose another major block of instruction time. So if you put all those things together, quite candidly, it was one of the most challenging financial situations I've ever been in. And so I think before I turn it over to Ray to give us an update on where we are, any of the board members, Pete, you want to add anything to that?
No, Jim, I'm good.
You feel like that pretty well captures where we are? What about Carol, Kevin, either one of y'all have anything you want to add? You feel like that captures where we are right now?
well, I do have a suggestion at this time, and I guess I'll go ahead since you did ask me if I had anything at all. I would like to make a suggestion that this committee, budget committee, will meet with Mr. Cagle, who is the acting consultant for during this budget process.
Okay. let me suggest, let's get through this and then let's come back to that, Carol. Which Mr. Cagle are you talking about?
Chuck.
Chuck Cagle. Okay. All right. Let me suggest, let's get through this and then Carol, we'll come back to that.
All right.
Okay. Mr. Washington, you want to kick us off?
Sure. As you said, Mr. Campbell, we're at $6 million this year that we need to shave off of our expenditures. And the only way we can do that right now is by using our fund balance. And we're expecting in excess of $10 million next year in shortfall. We've worked since Friday afternoon to see where we could actually make some cuts in our expenditures. We've gone through every line item in every school. And right now we're right at about $4 million. Each one of them is going to hurt, but at the same time, that's where we are. And looking at where we might be able to cut some expenses in order to try to meet the mandate of reducing expenses by $10.2 million. We're also in consideration, as you mentioned, of what needs we're going to have reopened, which are going to be excess of what we've had to do before. I was just speaking to Annette, our coordinated health nurse, and talking about PPE and other things that would be necessary, and things like homebound services for those students who, for medical reasons, won't be able to re-enter due to the COVID-19. So there's a lot of unknowns in what we have to account for with regards to how we're going to open and how we're going to reach the $10 million mark. In order to reach the $10 million mark, we're going to need some help from the legislature in order to relieve mandates on classroom sizes and many other things that are mandated that we have to do to get to that point. What we've worked through so far gets us to a point where we can still have school in the traditional manner that we're used to. But to go even further, we're talking about having to redo transportation, just the educational environment and everything associated with it. So we continue to work in good faith towards that. Now, of course, by law, we still have to propose a budget based on maintenance of effort, and at some point, continue to regulate our expenditures. We got lawn service going on, I'm sorry. And then if our funding does not come in at that level, what does that get us? So we don't want to get to the point where we're at an impasse with the county over this. We're working to try to make sure we resolve this on the front end, because if we don't, this could extend up until October 1st, but at that point, a decision has to be made. So we're trying to work to get through this as soon as possible, what we can and can't live without with, and hopefully the estimates on local sales tax come in better than expected to help us through this crisis. But we all realize that we're dealing with the situation none of us could have anticipated with COVID-19, and the implications are far-reaching as far as public education and what the capabilities are. So, we don't want to get into too much more detail other than we're going to have to propose a budget. We have to look at our expenditures and then work with the county on the funding aspect of it. Holly, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes, please. As you said, we have until October 1st, and then our funding may start to be impacted. Our BEP could be withheld from the state. But I thought I might kind of review the process if it comes to that. So if our budget has not been adopted by July 1st, the operating budget for the prior year will continue without further action by the county legislative body. During this time, we can amend that budget as if it is a final approved budget. The continuation budget will remain in effect and can remain in effect through July and August. It can only be extended through September 30th due to extraordinary circumstances, and this must be approved by the Comptroller's Office. And then again, if it's not approved by the end of September, the state can start to withhold our BEP funding.
So we're not looking to get to that point, but we are looking to try to figure out a way to equitably resolve this budget shortfall. And I spoke to the principals today at 11:30 and just informed them of what we were going through. Because the last time I spoke to them was Friday. We speak every Friday, and we hadn't had this information yet about the budget shortfall. So at that time, all was well. But since then, of course, there's been articles published in the paper and things of that nature. So we just want to make sure everybody gets the right message out of what we're dealing with and what we're trying to work towards. And we've kept Dr. King in the loop, and of course Mr. Johnson and Mr. Campbell in the loop all along the way as to what was going on and how we were addressing it.
Okay, I actually have a number of questions, but before I do, let me just ask, Kevin, do you or Carol have questions?
I don't have any questions at this time, but
Okay. Kevin?
my suggestion is still on the table when we get around to it. All right.
Kevin?
I don't have any right now. I'm just listening.
Okay. I guess I want to make sure I'm understanding the timeline that we're working under. Are we saying that we may not have this budget finalized until sometime in September?
I'm not saying we're not going to have it finalized. I'm just saying by then we absolutely have to have it finalized. We want to get it finalized by June 30th. I mean, that's the goal. We're going to turn a budget into the county on June 1st, and we're working on contingent activities behind that budget to try to get to the $10 million. Right now, we're at $4 million. So at the same time, the legislature is meeting regarding maintenance of effort. I hope they take the chance to look at the requirements that they have put on schools to relieve some of those requirements, because we cannot get to our number of 10 million without some different relief from the legislature. We have to look at, the mandated requirements that we have, and we will not be able to meet those requirements if we cut into $10 million.
Yeah. Mr. Washington, and I know classroom size is a big deal. It strikes me that we may be working at cross purposes with the effort to deal with COVID-19. COVID-19 may be driving us to smaller class sizes in order to get the social distancing that we need. And I'm not being critical. It's an incredible task that we're all being asked to undertake here. But
not only classrooms, but buses and other things, cafeterias.
Yeah, buses. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into, if we do have a mandate of social distancing in schools, it goes beyond just the classroom. There's a lot of other implications that are financially impactful that we're mandated to do that will play into this.
And I'm just going to throw this out, and again, this is the most overwhelming financial task I've ever been involved in, but I do think it would be better if we had our budget pulled together before the start of next year. It just strikes me, if we try to go into next year on a continuation budget, we may make the task of making these cuts that much more difficult to do.
Sure, and I asked the county about continuation budgeting. They're not necessarily forward, so that's not the goal, but that's a last resort. We want to try to have it resolved in the time frame before June 30th, which is normal, although these are very abnormal circumstances.
Yeah.
We're working towards getting everything done the best that we can prior to that date of the end of the fiscal year.
Carol, let me ask you, what your thoughts on bringing Mr. Cagle in?
What now?
Yeah, what were your thoughts, Carol, on bringing Mr. Cagle in?
Well, in as much as he is acting as a consultant, I would like to be in a meeting with him to see what he has to say. Let me also add, if you will, that we have a new director coming on. And of course, once he gets into this budget and look at it, things might change altogether, because he would have that right to make any adjustments that he or suggest along those lines. So we don't want to keep on talking like he's not around, okay?
Oh, no, he's in the room with us right now.
I know that.
Yeah, we understand that, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Jim?
Yeah.
But did I answer your question?
Yeah, I guess specifically, what would you want to, what questions would you have for Mr. Cagle?
Well, I won't get into that now for sake of time, but I have those questions that I could also, email to you guys or email to him if that's necessary before we meet with him, and I don't see why it would be.
I see we've got Dale on the phone. Dale, do you see any issue with bringing Chuck Cagle in?
No, I think Chuck would be happy to meet with the entire committee and try to answer whatever questions or that the committee may have. That would be, I would just need to get with Chuck on that, and I have been talking to Chuck and Ray and Holly. And Tiffany and I were on a conversation with him earlier this week, trying to pick his brain since he's dealt with school finance law for some time and represents several districts across the state. So it'd just be a matter of coordinating a time to make that happen.
Okay. Mr. Washington, do you have any issue with that?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Dr. King, you're in here. Would you think that'd be a good idea?
Engaging Chuck Cagle.
Okay. All right. Dale, why don't you see what his availability is? And then, Carol, I do think it would be helpful in preparation of that meeting to get our questions to him so he'd kind of be prepped on what our concerns were.
Very well.
Jim, I have a question.
I'm sorry?
Jim, I have a question, Kevin.
Okay.
Hey, my question is, I'm just wondering, as of right now, does the county commission have the ability just to say they're going to cut our budget? I mean, there's got to be state laws that have to give them that ability to do that. Is that not right?
Yeah, right now the legislature goes back into session June 1st, and this will be a topic of discussion then. That's why right now we can only present a budget that represents maintenance of effort because the law hasn't changed yet. So in anticipation of the law changing, that's why we're trying to do what we have to do behind the scenes. If it does change, we need to work to be prepared to meet the challenge.
Okay. All right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my last question for Mr. Washington would be, so what do our next steps look like? This is the middle of May. We're at $4 million in cuts, assuming we have to get six million more out. What does that process look like, and what kind of timeline have we got for that?
Well, the timeline to present a budget to the county is June 1st. As far as our contingent budget, that takes the 10 million out. I just hope that we could have that resolved before June 30th. We're at an impasse right now as to what to do next, because anything we do now impacts what I stated before, how we actually conduct school. And not only that, but how we conduct school in a COVID-19 environment. So there's some unanswered questions that won't be answered for quite a while, so that we can get to point of having our expenses and our funding kind of matched to have a real budget. All right, so it's just a day-to-day, hour-to-hour process that we're going through to try to get to that point. We'll be speaking to Ms. Bell and those on the budget committee at the county frequently over the next couple of weeks. I gave her an update last Wednesday as to where we were, this past Wednesday as to where we were and what our plans were to do. And so I just continue to do that and continue to look for feedback, get direction from the state, get direction from the commissioner's office as we evolve and work through this process. That's all I can do.
Okay.
Jim, can I ask a question?
Sure.
To the superintendent and to Holly. So what we're saying is we'll be working 2 budgets, all right? One that we'll submit So legally, we have to submit maintenance of effort budget. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So with that maintenance of effort, would that include possibility of teacher raise and or including the 2 special need pre-K classes that we had discussed? Would that be in line with maintenance of effort? Maintenance of effort, I think, is matching the dollars that they actually funded us the previous year. Is that correct?
Well, the original budget we presented was in excess of what the dollars that they had prepared us for last year, and we were already budgeting to use some of our fund balance to take care of some of those needs. So we got 2 or 3 different things in play right here. Our budget that we originally planned was in excess of our funding, and we realized that, and we will use some fund balance to compensate for that. If we look at what we budgeted this current year, then those ideas would not be in the budget. So where we are right now is we're coming back to where we are this current year, looking at that budget and working back from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Washington, anything else to add? Holly?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Dale, I know you've been on the phone. If you got anything you want to add to the conversation?
Just one thing, as far as trying to get a meeting with Chuck Cagle, you know, I think you might want to get those questions to Ray, perhaps, so that he can get them over to me and I can communicate with Chuck in advance of the meeting. I've just sent him an email asking for his availability next week. And you know, told him he could participate virtually if he needed to, instead of making a trip to Jackson. So as soon as I hear from him, I'll let you know. But in the interim, we probably ought to start working on what questions you have of him and get those funneled through Ray and to me and to Chuck. So
okay. So let me ask Kevin and Carol and Pete too. You may have questions. Could we get those questions to Ray by close of business next Wednesday? Is that enough time?
Oh, sure.
Yes,
for me.
that's,
absolutely.
that's good for me.
Okay.
Jim, could I
Dale, I would ask that you remember that it's graduation week next week while we try to schedule this. So most afternoons are going to be tied up.
Yeah, well, what I was going to also say is that just would basically mean that all we could meet next week were Thursday and Friday if the questions came in Wednesday.
Morning.
And if it was Wednesday at close of business, it would give us very little time for Chuck to look at those, even if we met Thursday morning or Friday morning. So,
well, do you even have availability next week for a meeting with graduation, or would it be better to put this to the next week?
I think it'd be more prudent to give Chuck time to have it the following week, early in the following week, to give him more time to answer and to have us have time to have clear mind and availability to do it. You know, the graduations on Thursday and Friday don't start until 4, but I'll probably have to be out there around 2 each day. So the mornings are okay if he can respond to us by, say, Friday. I wouldn't expect him to get the questions Wednesday and respond by Thursday morning, but maybe Friday morning could be an option.
Well, do we want to move up the deadline on questions and try to do something with Chuck? Well, today's Friday, though, Dale. Even you know, even if we got the questions in Monday, I mean, it just looks like to me we may be looking at the week of the 26th.
okay, I'll just send him a request for the week of the 26th, which is Memorial Day week.
Right.
So, but I'll send him a request and see what his availability is that week.
Okay.
So.
And if he comes back and says he needs to do it early, this coming week, we'll try to get him questions earlier.
Okay,
I just think it'd be helpful if he saw the questions before he went walking in cold.
and I agree with that entirely.
Okay. All right, anything else? Holly? Can you unmute?
If we could talk about the timeline for the budget proposal to be presented to the school board and the county. The county wants it by June 1st, which means we need to have the board to possibly review and or approve that budget the week of Memorial Day. So the 26th through the 29th. In order to get it to the board at that point, we're probably going to need to meet again next week late for the budget committee to review that before it goes to the full board the next week. So does that sound like, does that sound okay with everybody? I know it's going to be a massive amount of work on the district's end to be able to even put anything together in a format that would be even presentable next week with all these cuts in it. But we're doing our best to work through these things, and we'll be at a point where we can present something.
So, Holly, that budget you would be ready to present would be the one that reflects the $4 million in cuts. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And if we determine between now and then that there are any items that we can adjust, you know, we can add to that. But that's where we are at this point.
So, Pete, what do you think about
I'm a little confused. I thought that the budget we are submitting is the maintenance of effort budget, right?
We will present a budget that shows maintenance of effort revenue from the county. Local taxes budgeted at maintenance of effort as required by law. But the offset of that is the expenditures. And so for this year, I've adjusted our year-end estimates based on, as we get closer to year-end, I'm able to see that some of the expenditures won't come in as I had previously projected. So I've been making adjustments, and we may come in a little bit better than the previous number I gave you. So that will be updated in the budget document. Moving forward into next year, my thought is, you know, we try to show that we're working towards what we've been asked to do. We've come up with about $4 million worth of cuts, the committee has, and could present that to the budget committee and the board.
So we would need to meet the June 1st deadline, board approval. We would need to meet the week of the 25th, which is no later than the 28th. You think, which is Thursday?
So. Yes.
So that's Thursday.
Tim, you see what I'm here with that?
Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah.
Okay. So that means that the budget committee would need to meet earlier that week or the week before.
Right.
Week before, anyway.
Probably, if we could, late next week, in that if there are any changes that the committee would like to see implemented prior to the full budget going to the full board, we would have some time to make those adjustments.
Okay.
Jim, this Dale. Would you I would think that the committee might want to hear from Chuck before the full board meets to approve a budget. So, you know, I'm just throwing that in there because we probably need to consider that timing. So it would seem the reason that the full board might meet on May 28th, and then let's try to get a meeting with Chuck either the 22nd or the 26th or 27th.
Okay, but now Ray, the 22nd gets us back into graduation, doesn't it? Or does it?
I was thinking
Friday. Yeah, that evening, but the morning would be fine.
In the morning would be fine. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so Dale, did you hear that? Looks like the morning of the 22nd for a budget committee meeting. Carol and Kevin, does that work for you all?
It'll work.
Yes.
Okay.
For time?
Mr. Campbell, when you say morning, what time? What time do you want to make that?
I'm gonna be, we're gonna say 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock is
10
10 is
better.
fine.
10 is
10
fine.
o'clock. Let's
Can
just say
I-
10 o'clock.
Can I
6
interject?
o'clock.
Don't we need to wait and see what Chuck's availability is? And then
Okay.
let me communicate that, but I'll shoot for 10 o'clock on Friday morning to May 23rd. And if not, we'll look at May 26th and May 27th.
Okay. So questions in to Ray no later than Wednesday, and if we can get them in Tuesday, that would be better. Can we get, if we're gonna do that, can we get Chuck's questions in on Tuesday?
You fine?
Carol,
Yeah,
can you
that'll
have
be
your
fine.
questions in Tuesday?
That will be fine.
Okay, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. So Dale, we'll have our questions in Tuesday, and you get them to Chuck. So he'll have a couple of days to look at it before our meeting.
All right.
Okay. Holly, does that answer your? Okay. Anything else then? Then we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.